quadratic equations. For this one, we're going to solve equations by using the quadratic formula. Now, the quadratic formula is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So we're just going to use that here. So in order to use this formula, our equation has to be in standard form. So ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. We have to have that equals 0 for this formula to work correctly. And we have to put our terms in descending powers, which means the x squared first, the x second, and then the number last. So keep that in mind as you go through these. So then we get the general formula, which is ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So that tells me, when I have it in standard form, very easily that my a is 2, that my b is 5, and that my c equals 3. And they're all positive because I have pluses here. If I had minuses there, those would be negative. So now I have everything I need to actually use the quadratic formula. So think about that quadratic formula here. I'm going to put it here, and that's all I'm going to do here is plug that in. So what that means for me is x equals, and I have a negative b here. So I'm going to put minus, and my b is 5. So I'm going to put a positive 5 there. Now, if that was a negative 5, it would be negative 5. So be careful. Okay, that's plus or minus. That's a square root. And then I have a b squared here. So there's my b again. So that's going to end up being 5 squared. And use parentheses because if that's a negative, it's different than saying negative 5 squared without parentheses, technically. And this is going to be a minus 4, and then my a is 2, and then my c is 3. And that's all underneath the square root. Now be careful here, this line that's underneath them goes under that negative 5 as well. So now on the bottom here I get 2, and then 2 times 2 because my a is 2. Okay, now from here, I'm just going to simplify things some. So this is going to be negative 5 plus or minus square root 5 times 5 squared is 25 minus, and I'm just going to go 4 times 2 times 3 all together. So that's going to be 24. And that's all over 4. So then from here, 24 minus 25, or 25 minus 24 is 1. So this is going to be negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 1 over 4. And if you're okay with that, what is the square root of 1? 1. A lot of people are really afraid of that for some reason. I don't understand why, but they are. That's just the square root of 1 is 1 because 1 times 1 is 1. All right, so I really have negative 5 plus or minus 1 over 4, which means I really have two answers here, and I kind of talked about that in the last video. This is really negative 5 plus 1 over 4, or negative 5 minus 1 over 4, which those two answers, when simplified, negative 5 plus 1 is negative 4, so negative 4 over 4, and I'll write that out so you can see it, comma, and the other one here is going to be negative 6. So that's going to be negative 6 over 4, and I can definitely reduce those, so I have to reduce those. This is going to be negative 1 for the first one, and then for the last one, 2 goes into both those, so that's going to be negative 3/2. So there's our final answer for the first one. Right there. Okay, now let's do the next one here. So for the next one, it's not in standard form, so I have to write it in standard form first. So that means I got to get a 0 on one of my sides, like I did here, like I'm looking at here. Okay, so that means I'm going to subtract 9x, subtract 9x. So that's going to give me 4x squared minus 9x equals 0. So what I'm going to do from here is I'm going to say my formula then. That's right here. And then I'm just going to go and plug everything in here. So this is going to be equals negative. And here, my b here is negative 9. So let me do that first. I jumped a little ahead of myself here. I'm going to plug those values in first so you can actually see that clearly. So standard form would be ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So what we have for this one, we have the 4x squared. We have the minus 9x because those are both x terms. But we don't have a c here. So that really means this is a plus 0 equals 0. That's really what we're looking at. So then a equals 4, and it's those together. And b is going to equal negative 9 because it's this one here. And then c is going to equal 0. It's right there. Okay, so that's what we're really dealing with here. Now let's take a look at that quadratic formula. So that's going to be equals a negative, and then our b is negative 9. So I'm going to write a negative 9 there, plus or minus, because I'm right here, and then square root, and now I'm here. So my b again is negative 9. Now again, like I said, use parentheses there, because if I plug that in my calculator and I don't put that parenthesis in there, it's going to be wrong. It's going to give me the wrong answer. So be careful. Use parentheses. Okay, and then that's going to be a minus 4, and then my a is going to be 4, and that's here. And my c is 0, and that's right here. And that's all over 2 times a, and a again, it's 4. Okay, now all I'm going to do from here is just simplify. So this equals, now a negative negative is going to be positive. So that's just going to be a 9 plus or minus square root. Now this whole piece right here, 4 times 0, is actually going to give me 0. So I really get, and then negative 9 squared is 81. So I really get 81 minus 0. But I'm not going to put the minus 0 in there. So it's really just square root of 81. And that's over 8. And the square root of 81 is 9. So I really get 9 plus or minus 9. Let me fix my 9. It looks terrible. 9 over 8. So for both of my answers, and I'm just going to kind of write these in here, I'm going to get 9 plus 9, which is 18. So that's really 18 over 8, comma. The other one's going to be a minus, so 9 minus 9, which is 0. So I'm just going to write 0 for that, which the first one then simplifies a little more because that's 18 over 8. So if I divide both those by 2, I'm going to get 9 over 4, or 0, as our answers. So there we go, using the quadratic formula. Now for the quadratic formula, most of it is just dealing with that formula and arithmetic there. But it can be kind of tough sometimes, but that's our answer.